Barker with Freethought Radio with my co-host, Annie Laurie Gaylor. We are co-presidents of the Freedom from Religion Foundation, and we are continuing our enlightening interview with Professor and author Richard Dawkins. I think you were the person who coined the word meme, isn't that true?
Yes. And
that word has that word has become a meme of its own in society. It's sort of spread.
Yes. I mean, it's a kind of cultural virus. I wasn't really wanting to advocate it as a theory of how culture actually does work, but because it came at the end of The Selfish Gene, which was all about the importance of the gene in evolution, and I just wanted to make the point that the gene is not the only kind of self-replicating information that you can imagine. What Darwinism demands, the theory of Darwinian selection demands, is some kind of self-copying information, and there could be other kinds of self-copying information. Computer viruses would be another good example, which I didn't know about in 1976. So I coined memes instead, which are rather like computer viruses, but spread through human culture. And I used religion as one of the main examples.
As an infectious meme.
Yes.
That parents teach their children and society promotes.
Yes.
And that's how it's replicated.
Yes.
Well, it's a very enlightening way to look at religion.
And you also rail against people who identify children as that's a Muslim child and that's a Jewish child. And
that is a particular bee in my bonnet. I really, really think it's evil to label children. Just as one, I mean, it's okay to label a children a boy or a girl because there really is a difference between a boy and a girl, and they have it at birth. But to label children as a Catholic child or a Protestant child or a Muslim child or a Jewish child, as though they were capable of having the sorts of opinions that go with being a religion. I mean, a Muslim baby or a Christian baby, a baptized child is a Christian child. That is such an evil piece of child abuse because it is thrusting onto that child a whole baggage of opinions which when the child is grown up it may or may not wish to hold. That is not a Christian child. That is a child of Christian parents.
Yeah, but I remember thinking in a Christian family, well, this must be part of who I am. You see, Jewish kids think their Jewish identity is very important to who they are as distinct from the rest of the world. And that sort of is a self-replicating idea, isn't it?
Yes, it is. I mean, and of course there are strong aspects of that. I mean, the language that a child speaks is normally the language of its parents, and that is an important part of its identity. The customs, the clothes that a child wears, these are all handed down from the parents, and that, I suppose, is unavoidable. But if religion just were a whole set of rather quaint traditions, like how you wear your hair and how you wear your clothes, etc., then I suppose it would be moderately innocent. But it isn't. It's a whole set of opinions about the universe, opinions about morality, opinions about humanity, which are not to be thrust upon a child in the same way as something like clothes fashions or something harmless and innocent like that.
And these are concepts that small children can't possibly grasp, which I think is where you get into this idea of abuse.
Well, that's right. I mean, people usually get the point when I make the point that nobody would ever talk about a Keynesian child or a Marxist child or a monetarist child. These are concepts which are adult concepts. Adult economists can be described as monetarist or Marxist or Keynesian. But a child of a Keynesian economist is not a Keynesian child. A child of a Marxist economist is not a Marxist child, and a child of a Christian is not a Christian child.
And this is another argument that comes up in the United Kingdom, where you have faith-based schools segregated by religion.
Yes. That
taxpayers are paying for.
That's right. I presume there are faith-based schools in America too, but they're not paid for by taxpayers' money.
Well, in 3 instances they are, and of course it's a big movement, so it's something we're fighting very much.
Well, in Britain they're very common, and some of them go back a long way. I mean, the Church of England, the Anglican Church, has had schools for a long time. They're actually mostly pretty innocuous because they, although they are Anglican foundations, they don't, on the whole, indoctrinate in a very insidious way.
We saw some of the Muslim girls at that play, the play by that play.
Philip Pullman's play
about God,
The Dark Materials in London.
They were all sitting in the with their little outfits on, listening to this atheistic play, which we thought was pretty wonderful. Their school took them to this place.
Good. I mean, how old were they?
Oh,
grade school.
Yeah,
late grade school.
I don't know what that is.
In London,
probably 10 to 12.
Okay,
in their ages.
But
I didn't see that picture. That's nice.
Well, it's a very nice thing for children to see.
Yeah, I mean, what's happened is that because there have been Anglican schools and Catholic schools for quite a long time, the Muslims have now said, well, to be fair, we ought to have our faith schools, and they've got a point. But what the government ought to say is, right, we're going to have no faith schools at all.
Exactly.
Instead of which they've said, oh, well, to be fair, we've got to have Muslim schools as well. And so we've got this awful divisiveness.
Yes.
And it's been around in Northern Ireland a long time. I mean, the Northern Ireland troubles would disappear in a generation if there were not Catholic schools and Protestant schools teaching generation after generation of children the same bigotry as their parents were taught.
To hate each other, or that they're not the right religion.
A wholly different view of history.
It's so divisive. Religion is such a divisive.
Very, very divisive.
Well, that's why they want to identify this is a Jewish child, this is a Christian child, this is a Muslim child, in order to deliberately be divisive. We are set apart. We are better. We are chosen. We are elect. We are saved in some way from the others. I want to get back to what you said about improbability, which is really a strong, probably the key theme through your new book, The God Delusion, which will be out sometime this fall, we think.
Well, actually, it seems to be already out. It looks as though Barnes & Noble have jumped the gun and broken the embargo.
Well, great. We're going to have to get it to...
So it is now in Barnes & Noble. And
Amazon.com, I know, has been taking orders.
Amazon have now followed suit, and so I think it can now be obtained through Amazon as well.
I've debated some of these theists who, as you say, bring up this probability argument. And instead of arguing that God exists, they get up and argue that, well, based upon all these Bayes theorems and probabilities, we can conclude that there's a high likelihood of probability that there is a God. And so I sometimes say, oh, well, so you're not arguing that he does exist, you're arguing that he probably exists. Will you admit that if there is such a probability that he does, that there is also a possibility that he does not? And they never say that. Because it would imply if there's a probability for, there's also a corresponding probability against. And they never come down and say, well, yes, there is a possibility that he doesn't exist, because they believe by faith.
But, of course, your book is saying that, you know, the probability, of course, is that there is no God.
I want to say something much stronger than what Dan's just said, yes. I mean, I want to say that we can only ever talk about probabilities. But the probability that there is a God is very, very small, for precisely the same reason as the probability that an eye or a hemoglobin molecule could spontaneously exist. It's not impossible, but it's very, very, very improbable indeed. And a God would be even more improbable.
So if we're going to,
you turn their own guns on them, and
you
their own gun of improbability, you turn them on them.
You do that one.